My name is Crystal, and I'm 33 years old. Looking back on my childhood, I remember how my parents were always busy with work, but now I understand they were doing their best to give me a comfortable life. From my earliest memories, I spent most of my time at my grandparents' house nearby, a place that became my second home. When I started elementary school, I couldn't bear being alone at home, so I would go straight to my grandparents' house every day after school, though I still felt a lingering emptiness from my parents' constant absence. My grandmother, bless her heart, noticed this void in my life and showered me with boundless love and attention. Every day after school, she would have my favorite snacks ready, help me with my homework, and play with me. Her kindness filled my heart with such deep love. My grandfather, though quiet and sometimes intimidating, would faithfully wait by the door when it was time for me to go home. Thanks to my hardworking parents and ever-present grandparents, I grew up without facing real hardship, and my heart overflows with gratitude for all of them now. Perhaps influenced by my upbringing, I always dreamed of becoming a full-time housewife, supporting my husband and children while creating the perfect home. The thought of building a beautiful house and living there peacefully made my heart race with excitement. After graduating high school and college, I chose to work as an office clerk at a stable company. I wasn't looking for an ideal job or something particularly fulfilling. I just wanted a means to support myself. While diligently doing my work each day, my main goal was simply to finish at closing time. The office atmosphere was wonderful, free from gossip, and I felt like I had found my place. However, I had a strong desire to get married and planned to quit my job afterward. But reality didn't present such an opportunity, and before I knew it, 8 years had passed, and I had turned 30. At first, I was just working to get by month to month, but as I gained experience, I began to find satisfaction in my work. That's when I met Jared, a delivery man 5 years older than me. One day, exhausted after work and walking absent-mindedly, I collided with Jared, who was carrying a large package, and I fell. When I looked up at Jared's face as he reached out to help me, apologizing for not watching where I was going, it was love at first sight. His appearance was exactly my ideal type. While Jared carefully checked if I was injured, I couldn't take my eyes off his face. After this unexpected encounter, I couldn't get Jared's face out of my mind. Though I wasn't hurt, I felt a twinge of regret that I had no reason to see him again. Later, I became distracted at work, making more mistakes than usual, forcing me to confront these feelings. I decided to call Jared to clear things up. With a trembling voice, I introduced myself as the woman who had bumped into him at work. To my surprise, Jared responded kindly. I expressed my gratitude and asked if we could meet sometime, which led to a dinner date a few days later. When we met again and I saw Jared in casual clothes instead of his work uniform, my heart started racing once more. Jared had made restaurant reservations, and though we were both nervous at first, the conversation flowed naturally after a few drinks. We lost track of time as we enjoyed our conversation. Not wanting our time together to end and wanting to spend more time with him, I gathered my courage and asked if he would date me, provided he wasn't seeing anyone else. Jared smiled and said he would be honored to date me, and that's how our relationship began. After meeting several times, Jared shyly opened up about his feelings. Despite his appearance, he was shy but mature and dependable. A few months later, my father suddenly passed away from a heart attack on his way to work. It was shocking how he said, "See you later," as usual when he left, but never came home again. I was so devastated that I couldn't focus on work and took several weeks of paid leave. Jared worried about me, and although I couldn't respond, he kept sending me encouraging messages. He told me to focus on grieving my father and said he would wait until I was ready to talk. Jared never abandoned me, constantly showing his thoughtfulness and offering words of comfort. When I finally started returning to my normal life, Jared proposed to me. With a serious look in his eyes, he said that while he couldn't replace my father, he wanted to be my support, and asked me to marry him. Moved by his sincerity, I answered immediately through tears. I later learned that Jared had lost his own father to illness during his college years and had been living with his mother ever since. That's why he could deeply empathize with my pain of losing a father. A few days later, we visited Jared's home to formally announce our engagement. Jared's mother welcomed us, and I noticed she was a strikingly beautiful woman. I was taken aback when she introduced herself, saying, "Thank you for coming, Crystal. I'm Jared's mother, Beth. Please call me Mama Lion." Though I thought it would be awkward to use such a nickname with someone I just met, I managed to smile. She then said that I didn't have to force myself to use it, but she'd be happy if I did someday when I felt comfortable, which helped ease my tension a little. The fact that she was talking about the future made me feel slightly relieved, as it meant I wasn't being completely rejected at this point. Beth expressed surprise that her little bear had made such a big decision, sharing how she had worried about Jared showing no interest in marriage even after turning 35. That's why, she explained, when Jared found someone, he immediately moved out of his mother's house. I could see Jared was flushed with embarrassment at this story. He sheepishly explained that he had to move because he was worried I might be disappointed by apartment living. Beth laughed lightly and replied that he didn't need to say such things, especially after living together for so long. Though it was a small and modest apartment, it was clear that Jared and Beth had a very close relationship. After a while, Beth brought out Jared's photo album and began telling stories about his childhood. I listened quietly as she described how she had poured all her love into Jared. But suddenly, she asked an unexpected question: "How much is your salary?" Though surprised, I honestly answered that I thought it was average, maybe less than Jared's, but enough to live on. I didn't understand the intent behind her question, and I realized I had never discussed Jared's income with him, so I wasn't really sure about it. Looking at Jared, I noticed him averting his eyes, seeming uncomfortable. Thinking she might be worried about our financial situation, I added that since we would both be working, we should be fine even if we had children. But her next statement shocked me. She revealed that Jared was a contract worker. Faced with this surprising fact, I immediately responded that regardless of his employment status, Jared was working hard. I finally understood why Jared had looked so anxious. He hadn't wanted me to know he wasn't a permanent employee. As tension filled the room, Jared called his mother Mama Lion and tried to smooth things over by agreeing with my statement, saying he had been working at this job for over a year. His words surprised me in two ways: first, that he called his mother Mama Lion in front of me, and second, the implication about his work history. When I asked if that meant his previous jobs hadn't lasted even a year, he nodded and explained that he had struggled to find a career that suited him. I decided not to pursue the matter further, hoping marriage would change his perspective. Suddenly, Beth was flushed with anger, and she exclaimed, "Did you just call my little bear my darling?" She was angry that I had called Jared my darling. Overwhelmed by her intense reaction, I quickly apologized and said I should have just called him Jared. Jared urged Mama Lion to calm down, saying it was a day for celebration. Her attitude softened at his words, and she apologized, but added that she couldn't stay quiet when she heard her little bear being called my darling, and warned me to be careful in the future. I quietly responded yes, but this strange atmosphere sent chills down my spine. Later, when we got home, Jared apologized again for not telling me earlier about being a contract worker. I was so disturbed by Beth's strange behavior that I had completely forgotten about his employment status. I told him that it wouldn't be a problem as long as he didn't quit jobs frequently. That was my only request. However, what worried me more was whether Beth opposed our marriage. Seeing her behavior, I was concerned that she loved Jared so intensely that she wouldn't allow him to be with anyone. Jared assured me this wasn't the case at all, saying she had actually been looking forward to meeting his bride. While his words reassured me, I was still surprised by her insistence on that nickname. Jared explained that his mother, wanting to maintain a youthful image, had made him call her Mama Lion since he first started talking, and she had always refused to be called Mother. The tension I felt during this first meeting with my mother-in-law left me uneasy. Though I worried about our long-term relationship, I still held on to hope for a happy life with Jared. Although I had dreamed of becoming a full-time housewife after marriage, the reality was that I needed to continue working. Still, I had come to find fulfillment in my job after all these years, so it didn't bother me anymore. My relationship with Jared was going well, and he kept his promise to maintain stable employment. I believed he was my destiny. I managed to get through the few yearly meetings with my mother-in-law by staying quiet and avoiding conflicts. I later married Jared. However, in our second year of marriage, my mother passed away from illness. My hometown was far away, and I couldn't be with her in her final moments. Having lost my father just a few years before, I never imagined I would lose my mother too. Although Jared supported me, I sank into deep grief and couldn't function. Somehow, I managed to arrange the funeral as her closest relative. My mother-in-law attended the funeral, and when we were alone, she said something that shocked me. She said, "Now that your parents are gone, you only have me to take care of, so things will be easier for you." Was that supposed to be considerate? I couldn't believe she would say such a thing. Suppressing my anger, I asked her what she meant. She casually replied that a daughter-in-law's duty was to care for her aging in-laws, so having one instead of two would be better. Even Jared, who usually agreed with his mother to please her, couldn't accept this. He angrily told Mama Lion that this wasn't the time for such talk. But she just laughed, as if finding something amusing, and said, "I don't need you to take care of me now, but since fewer people means lower costs, your little bear is lucky." Her words seemed absurd and cruel. She thoughtlessly continued, saying even a small family funeral was wastefully expensive and meaningless, adding that she wouldn't want one for herself. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, trying my best to fulfill the unfamiliar role of completing and seeing through my mother's funeral. After the funeral, just when I thought I could finally calm down, her cold words hit me and I couldn't bear it. I wanted to scream at her to stop, but my voice came out weak, barely audible. Though my faint protest clearly hadn't reached her, she continued her verbal assault. She declared it was fortunate that I would receive the full insurance payout since my mother had died of illness and I was an only child. True, I was the beneficiary of my mother's insurance. Thanks to my father maintaining multiple insurance policies, my mother had been able to live comfortably after his death, and I had always been grateful for that. And my mother, too, had maintained solid insurance coverage. Yet here was my mother-in-law, declaring it fortunate and suggesting I should be happy about receiving money because a loved one had died. Did she seriously think I would rejoice in receiving that money? I finally couldn't contain my anger anymore. I told her she had no right to say such things and demanded she leave immediately. I roughly handed her belongings and pushed her toward the funeral home exit. Even as I pushed her out, she continued making self-centered comments, saying things like, "You should use that money wisely," and "mourning the dead is meaningless." While ignoring her words, I tried to force her out, wanting to remove her from my life. But before I could fully close the door, Jared interrupted, worried about his mother. He said I was going too far and announced he was going to Mama Lion's house, telling me I needed to calm down. Before I could respond, he chased after his mother, leaving me alone when I needed support the most. His actions felt like he was condemning me and defending his mother, which deeply wounded my already fragile heart. I stood there, overwhelmed with pain, unable to understand why he wouldn't stay by my side. Jared didn't return the next day. Sinking into despair, I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the overwhelming sadness and feeling of abandonment. A month later, Jared finally came home. Weeks of suppressed despair, grief, and anger welled up inside me as I asked him where he had been. In a casual tone, he said he'd been at Mama Lion's house because he was worried about her, then confessed he had quit his job. While I had expected him to be at his mother's, I never imagined he would quit his job. As my trust and love for him crumbled, I sighed deeply and asked sarcastically if that was also Mama Lion's idea, telling him we needed to live our lives separately as adults. Then Jared pulled out his phone, showing me his mother's smiling face on a video call. She cheerfully asked if I was still angry, then scolded her little bear for returning too soon. Apparently, the video call had been connected since Jared came home. With a smile that grated on my nerves, she urged Jared to tell her quickly. Following his mother's instructions, Jared showed me a piece of paper. It was an advertisement for a $2 million villa with a pool. He announced that he had purchased this house for our family. Before I could ask where he got such money, his mother interrupted. "Remember Crystal? I told you a daughter-in-law has a duty to care for her in-laws," she said arrogantly into the camera. "By throwing me out, you refused that duty. That makes you unfit to be Jared's wife. You're no longer family." Ignoring her, I turned to Jared and demanded to know how he could afford such an expensive property. But before he could answer, his mother cut in, "Haven't you figured it out? Where else could the money come from except your account?" Finally understanding the situation, I trembled with shock as I watched Jared proudly holding up my bank card. I quickly snatched it back, clutching it instinctively as I realized their criminal act. Jared had come home while I was at work and taken my bank card without permission. That account contained the inheritance my mother had entrusted to me after my father's death, the inheritance I received after my mother's death, and my own savings. Seeing my confused expression, his mother smiled with satisfaction and declared, "We just put unused money to good use. Why do you look so displeased? It's wrong to let it sit idle in the bank." She added another blow, saying, "If you want to return to the family, apologize. Then we might consider living together." Jared continued defending his mother, saying, "We can still fix this," and insisting that, "I want to continue our marriage, but it's impossible unless you reconcile with Mama Lion and apologize." Though I had sensed it coming, their words contained no apology or explanation for stealing from my account. I was speechless, overwhelmed by deep disappointment and betrayal. His mother continued to interject, saying, "My son is too kind. But now that we have the villa, we don't need someone like her. You should find a new wife," she declared. After thinking for a moment, Jared agreed and handed me papers his mother had prepared just in case. Predictably, divorce papers. Feeling I had nothing left to lose, I smiled and thanked him, saying, "How thoughtful of you to bring these. Now I won't have to prepare them myself." I began filling out the papers right there, and Jared filled out his section too. I started packing my belongings, but since it was his house, I decided to leave all the appliances behind. "Goodbye. Enjoy living in your mansion bought with stolen money," I said as I left without looking back. Despite losing so much, I strangely felt my heart becoming lighter. Taking a deep breath, I looked up the bank account I had retrieved from Jared, and to my surprise, all the money was still there. What's going on? I wondered. His mother had claimed they purchased the mansion with my money, but not a penny had been touched in my account. While curious about how they had purchased the mansion, I felt relieved that my assets were safe. With that sense of relief, I went directly to the courthouse and completed the divorce procedures. As I left there, Jared called. Out of curiosity, I answered, and he immediately began explaining about the villa payment. According to him, Mama Lion had assumed they were using my money, but in reality, she had used all of her own hidden savings. When Jared checked my account balance and told her, she had mistaken it for insurance money. He explained that his mother had received a considerable sum of about $500,000 from her husband's life insurance and inheritance, which she had initially kept in the bank. Later, Jared withdrew and hid at home, tired of constant investment solicitations. Now that I had answers to my questions, I lost interest in hearing anything more from Jared and told him, "If you haven't touched my money, I don't want to hear anything else." Jared frantically continued, explaining that his mother, usually frugal and reluctant to spend her own money, had suddenly decided to buy a $2 million house as soon as she learned about my account. She had instructed Jared to use my account for the down payment, take out a loan, and then quit his job. Jared had started the necessary procedures but realized, while I was at work, that he couldn't withdraw money with just the bank card. He had returned home several times looking for my signature but couldn't find it. Meanwhile, his mother had kept pressuring him to proceed with the plan as the down payment deadline approached. In the end, Jared couldn't confess to his mother that he couldn't withdraw the money, so he reluctantly used her hidden savings for the down payment, took out a loan, and then quit his job. Hearing this, I felt only pity, embarrassment, and complete confusion. Do you think I should feel sorry for you? Is that why you're saying I should apologize to Mama Lion and start over? I asked. He was essentially telling me to apologize to his mother, come back to him, and continue paying the loan. The insult was unbearable, and anger welled up inside me. I calmly replied, "I've already filed for divorce, so we'll never be together again. We're strangers now." Jared seemed shocked that I had already filed, asking incredulously, "You didn't just sign those papers now, did you?" I told him in a liberated tone that I had gone straight to the courthouse after leaving his house, so this matter no longer concerned me. Saying it out loud made me feel strangely lighter. Jared kept muttering desperately about how he would pay the loan now that he had quit his job. He had planned to use my inheritance and salary to pay for the house. I sarcastically suggested he have his mother take out lots of insurance policies. Then she might experience the good fortune she had spoken of to me. Then I hung up before hearing his response. After that, Jared called many times, but I ignored them all. However, one day, I decided to listen to a voicemail he had left. In his long message, he was begging for help with the loan payments. He said his mother had injured herself in the pool and couldn't walk on her own anymore. Everything was falling apart, and he couldn't take it anymore. Listening to the end of the message, I learned she had recklessly jumped into the pool without considering her age and hit her back on the water's surface. She couldn't get out by herself and was immediately taken to the hospital by ambulance, but the fall was serious, leaving her unable to walk alone. Refusing outside help, she pushed the responsibility of caregiving onto Jared, and he obediently began caring for her despite his lack of knowledge. However, she complained that he couldn't provide proper care and asked to use the money hidden in the dresser to enter a well-equipped care facility. She stated that she preferred professional care over Jared's inadequate caregiving. When Jared finally confessed that the savings had been used for the down payment and was now gone, she was predictably furious. Being frugal, she hadn't enrolled in any insurance and had no pre-accident coverage. She had previously worked part-time, but spent most of her income on beauty products, leaving no savings. Jared, who had jumped from job to job, was in a similar financial situation. They desperately tried to sell the mansion, but finding a buyer proved difficult. Exhausted by his mother's whimsical demands, but unable to abandon her, Jared ended up living with her in a small, old apartment. Perhaps somewhat reformed, she reluctantly accepted help from caregivers, and Jared is now working hard to repay the loan. While listening to the voicemail, I felt only pity and deleted the message without hesitation. Life is truly unpredictable. Now I'm immersed in my work and living a fulfilling life. I can't believe there was a time when I had no motivation or ideals about work. I've been promoted to a position with greater responsibility, and my job has become more rewarding than ever before. The man I once thought was my destiny now only evokes pity. Still, that experience helped me find my true self. Perhaps that too was part of destiny. I'll continue working hard, saving money, and living life to the fullest in my own way.